It is August 17th, 2020. This is Atlanta United FC Weekly, a Home Before Dark podcast. And Kevin doesn't have his whistle, and I'm very disappointed. But as always, I'm Tim Herb, joined by my lovely co-host. I got Kevin in the Brady Bunch square on the bottom left. Got Dan. I did it that time. To the right. And we got our buddy Josh Bagriansky of Mouse of the South podcast joining us.
Good to be with you guys.
Thanks for hopping in.
Yeah.
Being my orange brethren.
Yeah, we are matching. That was not planned, as far as I know, at least.
Yeah, we are very much trying.
I'm disappointed. No one told me we were wearing orange tonight.
Yeah, very much just trying to bug people's cameras out or their monitors out. Just trying to be as harsh on the eyes as possible.
That's exactly. Well, I'm already on. I figure if people have to see my face, I might as well just go all in on the harshness on the eyes. Yeah, so we're already going down that route. Stick with it.
Yeah. It sounds good. Yeah, that's right. That's right. Thank you guys for being with us. If you're listening to us on iTunes, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, what have you, leave us a rating and or a review. We will read it live on the show. If you guys are watching this on YouTube live, thank you for joining us. We got Elliot Beaven in the trap so far. Yeah, show's 2 weeks in the making. Had some stuff come up last week, so we weren't able to do it last minute. But it's good to be back. Dan, you got your strawberries and concrete on?
I do.
Yeah, nice. It's like the weirdest fitting jersey I've ever worn in my life.
Yeah, it's
not great. Snug around the midriff.
Yeah, but then it's tent size, like our dress length. Like I feel like it comes down to my thighs.
Yeah, I have the rather emasculating body shape of it's nice and baggy in the shoulders, but around the waist it is snug.
Yeah,
that's like
it brings back the old days of the tall tee, or you could wear it to bed. You can wear it. Yeah, you can wear it to sleep. Yeah.
Soccer jerseys are really difficult, man. It's a really difficult buy. I mean, some of them fit smaller, some larger, and just they're made to fit men, And so I certainly don't fit into that category. Seems you don't either, Dan. And it's tough, man. It's tough.
I'll still wear them.
Tim, you fit pretty nicely into yours, though.
You can only see me from like nipples up though, so that's why. It's it's definitely like a crapshoot. It's like a big roll of the dice getting a soccer jersey. It's you have no idea because we did the promotion with the Way Days. I mean, we were doing all the mystery kits, and I got a couple of those. And man, it's weird. Like that Rangers Puma kit, not fit. That fits like shit. Like I already have such a horrible time fitting into t-shirts as it is. And then you throw into the mix. Sometimes they're short, sometimes they're long. If you get them from eBay, who knows?
It's the Pumas are always tough. Anytime I see Puma, I'm like, oh God, I might have to go with a size larger than usual. But then it comes in, it's big, I don't know. It's tough. I'm with y'all. It's tough.
I just don't know how the home and away kit with the strawberries and concrete were so drastically different in fitting the exact same year with the exact same sponsor. I have no idea how that happens.
They're from Adidas. They're sold by Fanatics. Like it's the exact same. Like
exactly.
What do you just have like two different plants making the same, or two different factories making different jerseys?
Maybe it has something to do because the concretes have the stripes on the side. So it's a completely different manufacturing process to the regular ones with the stripes on the shoulders. Maybe that had something to do with it.
Yeah, I got served up an ad the other day. Speaking of t-shirts and night shirts, have you guys seen this? Have you guys been served this up, or do I just have a weird browsing history where I got served up a onesie polo? Is a polo shirt that goes to the crotch. It's like a Speedo mixed with a polo, and then it has a little patch at the bottom. It's like if you want to
custom. Will they do
no, I have not.
Yeah, I was gonna say, will they do custom logos and stuff? I think instead of scarves next year, we just do those. We just do Home Before Dark polo onesies.
It's for the guy who wants to dress up in a polo, tuck it into his pants, but not have to worry about underwear.
But we're definitely doing skin toned.
Right. Oh, yeah.
Or the pepperoni pizza print.
What went into your internet history to have this coming up, first of all?
Do a skin tone polo onesie with just the red, just a red collar. Everything else is skin tone below the collar.
That's what's so scary about Google ads and like Facebook ads and all that stuff is like they're so good at their algorithm that I wasn't searching anything remotely close, but it was this, and then.
But they knew what you wanted.
Oh,
yeah, they got it. They always get you.
He wants polo onesie, which is almost as good as a sleeveless polo, right? Yeah. Go cut off polo. Guys, we have soccer on Saturday.
I'm so excited.
It's going to be weird. At the Benz, nobody there. Playing against Nashville, coming off of 4 points in 2 games. It's the most points a team from the South has gotten in a while.
Yeah,
it seems encouraging with the comments that Brad Guzan made in talking to Stephen Glass with them having some direction on the field. So I'm hoping that we're going to see some improvement just in terms of the chemistry between the guys than what we saw last time we were out on the field.
Was that a pot shot taken at Frank de Boer? Having direction on the field? Yeah.
Didn't Cole Beckerman do the same thing to Jurgen Klinsmann after Jurgen left the USMNT job? It's like something like we got off the bus and we never knew what we were doing.
Yeah, he did sub-talk him a little bit, for sure. Just talking about having a direction, and he mentioned everyone knowing their role and what to do, and how that was clearly not the case. Anyone could see that in Orlando. I mean, it's hard not to see that as a shot at Frank de Boer, especially when you mix that with the press conference that he had in Orlando after the final match, where it seemed like, you saw a furious Brad Guzan, I think, again, kind of talking about a lack of cohesion under Frank de Boer. So I think there's no question that at least part of that is assessing the failures of the de Boer regime, for sure.
I just like to compliment Dan on drinking his Coke Zero out of his martini glass tonight.
Is that what that is? Hey, I didn't even ask.
Watered down Coke Zero.
Whoa, Josh! You got Josh, you're looking scary. You got your green screen like background thing on.
Yeah, I noticed when I got close to the camera.
Getting patching out.
Yes, I don't know what that's about.
I think you just need to spend the rest of the time being very close to the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, that'll be good for everybody. Yeah, everyone will enjoy that.
Interesting. So, Josh, I had a question for you. With Stephen Glass coming in and hopefully giving the team some direction, do you see any sort of advice solution to the Pity Barco conundrum that was kind of going on under Frank, with them both not really knowing what to do and getting in each other's way?
Yeah, I mean, a lot. It's a tough one. I mean, I'm sure. I know you guys have talked about this a lot. How they're kind of a similar type of player in attack. So they definitely were on top of each other at times. But I always felt it had more to do with a lack of balance in the midfield that was able to kind of provide them service in areas where they could be dangerous. So I almost think that the solution is more about adding a third center midfielder as opposed to what Frank de Boer was doing with that 3-4-3, where you can build out of the back a little bit more effectively and find them in areas where they're already dangerous. Because that, for me, that was the big problem, was you saw PT and Barco forced to come all the way back in the midfield, even in the defensive half, to drive the team forward. And so naturally, they kind of were on top of each other a bit. So, I mean, I'm hoping that the solutions elsewhere will help that kind of fix itself on its own.
Interesting. Yeah, I hope so. I hope so too.
Well, I mean, what do you guys think? I mean, like, because honestly, we're all just kind of we don't really know what to expect. I mean, I'm certainly hoping they play a little bit more freedom, a little less restriction, but I don't even know what to look for in terms of what specifically needs to look different, other than the obvious, need to play better. But from like a coaching standpoint, what specifically has to happen differently under Glass that didn't under Frank de Boer? We don't really know yet, so it's going to be interesting.
I don't know.
My whole theory is because Frank, because he was from Ajax and all his success was in Ajax, with Ajax players were because they were coming up from the academy. So they already had this idea of trying to think for themselves first on the field to solve their problems. And I just don't think that was ever, I mean, if that is what you are trying to do, you've got to have really good communication between the coaching staff and the players. And that evidently never happened. So I'm hoping if Glass can kind of move away from that and just provide some sort of structure that kind of gives specific direction to players, then, and also getting input from the players. So it's a two-way street in terms of the communication that will help solve some of the frustrations that the players were having. Because I think a lot of that frustration came back onto the pitch in terms of how we were just trying to play.
How much of it is less? Well, all right, I don't know. So I was just going to say we have a couple things in the comments in the trap. I just want to call people out. Obviously, Richard Gordon, Dean Worley, Brandon Scott, Brittany S., Mike German, Mike German, and Brian. And so Elliot Bevan says, what is Glass's style of play? And I don't know how much it really matters necessarily, right? Like, you're talking about like what to expect from the play, or what we expect to be different, or what should be different to be successful. And I don't know about that, but I think one thing that we can probably look forward to is maybe having a little more creativity, or a little less restraint in the midfield, maybe. And that might open things up a little bit, like what we saw with, between Mo Adams and Emerson Hyndman. Like I felt like they were a little restricted in their play, right? I mean, they both were kind of flat at times in the midfield, but I mean, with Glass coming in saying he's going to be playing more aggressive, going to be playing more attacking, to kind of fit the mold of what Darren Eales and Bocanegra want. I mean, I would imagine that we're going to see a lot more aggression, a lot more chance taking from that center midfield too. Who's the third, Josh? If you're thinking a center three?
Yeah, it's not a great selection to choose from. I mean, I think obviously Hyndman has to be in there. He's probably your most dynamic box to box. And for me, I mean, I think you could probably pair Laurentowicz and Remedi and play kind of a two holding midfield system. And again, I think that would help you build out of the back a little easier, which I'm assuming, the good thing for Stephen Glass is, it's already probably been made clear that he's not going to be the long-term solution. So he doesn't have to come in and try to implement some system or philosophy. He can kind of just, play a, 4-3-3, which isn't too different from what DeBoer was doing, and just have the players enjoy themselves more. And that's the main thing I'm worried about or not worried about, but I'm looking at is, going back to those Guzan quotes, there was so much about the players just interacting with DeBoer. And I think all these, I'm sorry, not with DeBoer, with Glass. And I just think that the connection is going to see them play with a little bit more freedom, not necessarily a totally different system or anything. But the fact that, like I said, he doesn't have to completely overhaul the way the team plays, just allow them to enjoy themselves a little bit more and express themselves a little bit more. And that's all he has to really do. I mean, it's going to be the same group of players. And so I think a lot of these issues, like with the midfield being flat, or what you were saying, Dan, with Barco and Pity, will be solved hopefully in a lot of ways just by the players enjoying themselves more and enjoying training every day.
What are you looking forward to seeing, Kevin? What are you hoping to see on Saturday whenever we take the field?
It's the same questions, right? And I stand by the fact that I don't think the new manager is just going to all of a sudden have all of those answers. I still don't think this team knows who or how they're supposed to be scoring. And maybe that comes by better link-up play and players having more fun. But at the same time, like, I don't know if that necessarily solves all of the problems, right? So what I'd like to see is at least defensively, Atlanta maintain some semblance of what it was last year and the beginning of this season, what little bit we got to see. Kind of want to throw the whole tournament out as a wash. But defensively speaking, I expect to see, a lot of the same with Guzan out the back, Meza and Miles Robinson sort of anchoring that defensive line and being really comfortable possessing the ball in the backfield. But basically from the midfield forward, it's anybody's guess what we see or who we see there. Again, the big question mark is who's going to score. And right now, I don't think anybody, including Glass, knows what that answer is. Not even the players, it seems like, because even under Frank, regardless of what tactic or approach you're doing, you've still got two very capable players at the top of the field that seem reluctant to take strikes or put them on target when given the opportunity. So
yeah, it's funny, all the drama and everything that's happened, you almost forget that Joseph Martinez is out for the season. Right. So almost no matter what we go through, or that's going to be a huge problem.
Right.
And how do you figure that out? I don't think like you said, I don't think Glassy knows either.
Yeah, and I think that what I hope to see, I guess, and it's not even this Saturday. Like this Saturday, I don't have any expectations. I guess my expectations for the rest of the season would be, because this team knows that they're in a state of flux and that nothing is permanent coming out of this season, the most beneficial thing would be to see the most looks for the talent that you have on the roster. So I'd like to see, are they maintaining the 5 substitutions in the back half of the season? Do we know?
They are, yeah.
So I want to see all 5 substitutions used every single game. I want to see as many different rotating starting 11s over the course of whatever season we have left, to see what Cubo Torres does in this lineup, who Joseto is in this lineup, what Castro looks like given, a run of games, and whether Pitti really is at fault for this. What's it look like with him in the lineup? What's it look like with him out of the lineup? I think these are all things that are on the table right now for the team to really evaluate and figure out from a personnel standpoint from top to bottom going forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited to see Castro Rosetto actually have some time to play. I'm really interested to see what Dan brings, to see what he has at this point in his career. Everyone talks about he's just like lightning quick and the fastest guy, but I hope that still is the case. But yeah, I think having that speed is going to be great. It just depends on how quickly he can get up to speed. Because, he can be the guy can really help bust a bunker.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things that really in Orlando was in the tournament was you could see that there was no one that could ever get in behind the defense, and maybe every now and then it would be your wing backs getting forward, but so it made it easy to defend. The defense could just converge on Barco and PT, as we've discussed quite a bit at this point, but that's easy to do when you don't have another one that's a threat to run in behind. So obviously that's been Tito Villalba quite a bit in the past. And Joseph Martinez as well. So Dan will finally give you a player on the roster that can do that, and at the least just open up space for others to play in an attack.
So Mike German poses a good question in the trap, and this is one that I was actually going to pose to you guys. I don't know. This is an interesting lineup because you could see. Let's say you're operating, probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but you're probably going to be operating, in a 4-3-3, but more of a 4-2-1-3, right? Or 4-2-1-2-1, if you want to call it that, with Cubo Torres up, probably forward, 2 attacking, let's call them wingers behind him, an attacking midfielder, center midfielder, like more offensive and behind them, and then kind of 2 anchors in front of the 4. Could you see Emerson Hyndman and Lorenowitz maybe playing those deep lying roles, maybe put Barco in at attacking mid, and then have Jürgen Damm on one side, PD on one side, and then Cubo Torres up on one side, or not on one side, on the top.
I will say out of all of that, because there's a lot of math and a lot of numbers, I think the one thing out of all of that, and the one thing that I would bargain is the most consistent play out of Pitti, is with him over in that wing position. Him in center midfield, I have just not enjoyed seeing as much, which is what Dan's got drawn up as well.
So I think I want to put Pitti out on the wing. I think Barco is going to be better centrally because he's more of a dribbler. I know it's going to kind of morph around anyway.
And Barco's more of a box-to-box player too, which you want to see more centrally.
Right, but if you've got Hyndman there, then he can kind of help out Remedi, who can drop back, or Remedi or Jeff, who can drop back into the middle of the center 3, while these boys, Bello and either Escobar or Lennon, are bombing up forward. And then I'd push Barco upfield. I'd want him to keep on getting there and rely on Hyndman to be that guy who can push it back and forth.
Right, but either way, you've got both of them because it's the same thing with like your back four, right? It's the rotation back and forth on the field. If Escobar goes up, Bello almost has to drop back and vice versa. So it's the same thing with Barco and Hyndman. You want a player that's going to be there that you can depend on. If Hyndman's pushing up, that Barco is there to support, but has also got the pace and defensive playmaking ability to track back if he needs to and vice versa.
My worry is that Bello isn't going to be great at tracking back. That I mean, I know we saw that 1 or 2 games in Orlando where he just wasn't there, and maybe he's just better if he just pushes up the field, and maybe Meza just takes on a better role, or Remedi, or you put Jeff in there instead of Remedi, and then he can do better with dropping back.
Dan, are you worried a little bit about the defensive side of that lineup? Like in some way, I mean, it's really like that midfield three is kind of the crux of
absolutely
Glass's decision. And obviously, if you play Barco there, that's and Hyndman, that's an extremely attacking look through the center of the field. And that you could run into some same problems you ran into that we saw at MLS's back with a lack of balance. So
and just a lack of a midfield in general because it's way too far forward, and then you've got your defense in the back. There's nothing in the midfield.
I would love to see that, but it's interesting because I feel like in a lot of ways we consistently, when we make lineups, we put Barco in that spot because that allows PT, Dom, and then a proper number 9 to play. And we've almost done similar things in years before because it allowed Miguel Almiron, Joseph Martinez, Tito Villalba all to play at once. But for whatever reason, 2 managers have not played Barco really in a center midfield role. He's played underneath as like a second striker and like a 3-5-2 or whatnot. But there's a little more, certainly a little more discipline to that role. So I want to see it too, Dan. I love it. And to build off what Kevin said earlier, you kind of want to see the manager try things at this point, see what you can do, play everyone. Right. And certainly that's something that I feel like has been begging to be tried. Play Barco a little bit deeper by design and see what happens. Might as well at this point.
Well, and that's what's going to go ahead.
Oh, okay. So yeah, under Tata, because we had Almiron, and I just never thought the Barco was going to really unlock any of his real true potential with Almiron in the lineup because we were all totally built around Almiron.
Yeah.
And it was kind of either you play one or the other, though they both played on the field at the same time. But Barco never really got like enough full games under Tata.
Yeah.
So
they're both guys you kind of have to run the attack through, and they play differently.
Yeah. But I mean, the lineup I just put, I mean, Hyndman's got to be that pivot who can track back. So there is like it's going to be like the defensive transition. How do the players react to that defensive transition?
Mm-hmm. You're definitely asking for a Nagby-esque contribution from Hyndman there.
Right. And that was going to be my question. And again, goes back to you're going to see a lot of rotations. You could you could potentially see Joseto in that role too, right? I mean, he was doing that very early on in the season over Hyndman. So back to the same point, I want to see a lot of different rotations, a lot of different looks. And I think that's going to ultimately be the biggest asset going into next season as a manager that has a lot of different source material to look at and see, okay, these guys work really well together. This grouping, this formation works really well together. All of those sorts of parts and pieces to try to come up with a tactic that's best suited for the players on the roster.
And I think so much of it has to do, it almost starts with how you select that midfield 3. If you pick a more kind of conventional with Hyndman as the highest of the 3 center mids, you're going to be a little more defensive. Or, Dan, certainly you present the most kind of attacking, probably aesthetically pleasing lineup, and that's with Barco playing in the middle. So whatever happens, it's all going to be determined based on what happens down the spine in the midfield.
What's kind of crazy to think about is that the team almost it's going to be really interesting because, again, we kind of take it for granted that Joseph's always been there and he's not going to be there for the rest of this year. And so we're talking about getting all of these looks and seeing what these players all look like because of the situation that they're given right now. But how does any of the benefit or any of those groupings or any of that style of play fit in whenever you've got a, Golden Boot winner returning next year and trying to figure out how that style of play fits into that lineup too,
I think that we should treat this season, the rest of it, whatever it is, like a season of Last Chance U. Like we should just go out there, let the guys that are trying to get to Europe.
Who cares?
Like get that D1 contract. Just let them go ball out of control. I mean, obviously, I say that in jest, but I mean, it in some ways, I kind of just feel like we should unleash the shackles. We have all this attacking talent. Yeah, it feels like we've had so much pent up potential in the attack that has just I felt like has gone underutilized or unutilized. And
this is totally speculating, but I feel like the players who have felt a bit shackled, that change will see them perform very well.
Or at least they fucking better, because that's been the big, like, that's where I'm coming from. It's like, all right, well, you can't fall back on the manager anymore. So if you're not performing now, it's on you, bucko. So
yeah.
I almost feel like we're going to see like a Dave Sarachan USMNT type run. Like, I hope so anyway. Granted, we weren't playing the best talent. He knew he was only the interim manager. Glass knows he's only the interim manager. He really should only be there to not try and put his stamp there, lay down a foundation or anything around himself. It should be about maximizing the players and trying to fit the system or fit his play style to the talent he has around him, as opposed to a long-term manager who's, for better or worse, going to come in and try to put their own foundation in place, try and stick to their formation, however much they try to, like Frank DeBoer being stubborn. But this is a time for the players to really shine, because it's going to be, I think, a very fluid situation with an interim manager that has I don't think he has any illusions whatsoever about what's going on. And I think it's just going to be a matter of putting those people in the right places and just kind of just letting them play.
It's really on the players to perform, just put them in a position to succeed. There's a good amount of attacking talent. Just why not play Barco at, in the middle every now, and see what happens. And even if you don't play Barco there, play those front three with freedom and let them, roam wherever they like. That's what I want to see too. It's just a team that looks like the shackles have come off, and they still might not score goals, but at least it'll be fun to watch. And like you guys said, it'll help guys like PT and Barco and others make a case to move on to Europe, which is really the selling point for Atlanta United in the first place. Is if you come to us, we can move you on to the big leagues.
Yeah, well, if Barco's value is going to increase, I mean, he's got to have those opportunities to take shots and be able to score those goals. At least put up like double numbers for goals and assists.
Yeah, and surely his value has dropped, right? I mean, he's played so few matches. Obviously, the pandemic brings the market down anyway. I mean, he's a player that whether he gets sold or not in the offseason, his value can really go one way or the other throughout the rest of the MLS season.
Mm-hmm.
You think about the speed on this team that we could potentially have on the field. I think that's one of the more exciting things to me. If you look at Jürgen Damm, Bello, put in Brooks Lennon, like you're talking about a lot of speed. At Barco too. I mean, you're talking about a lot of speed in this lineup that could definitely cause some issues.
It can on a counter, but again, it goes back to what Josh was saying before, is that like it takes a lot of discipline too. Whenever you've got a lot of fast players that are all wanting to press up, and it leaves a massive hole in the midfield for a quick counter the other way, and they're just having to pace back to try to recover. You open yourself up on the other side of the ball. I mean, luckily we're kind of anchored defensively with a couple of backs that have been really consistent, at least so far this year. And Miles Robinson off of last year, obviously, but it is a lot of pace, but it's the whole Spider-Man quote, right? With great power comes great responsibility. So it's got to be mitigated with some sense of responsibility and patience too. So,
well, is that where you play Jeff Lorenowitz and you tell him essentially to be more of a
or Remetti?
Yeah,
exactly. And Dan's kind of got that anchored to the same effect in his lineup, where you have to have somebody that's kind of that holding midfielder in a way behind whatever pace that you're putting up past midfield. So,
well, that's what when we were playing, not in the playoffs, but when we were playing just regularly under Tata, we would be that team that could swarm up and then swarm back down the field, and we would live and die by that. How many guys we could get back to defend, and then we had Michael Parkhurst.
Right.
But Mark Robinson's a lot more mobile. So.
Right. And I don't want to give up that comfort that we have on the defensive side of the ball just because we have players with pace that can track forward and backward, right? Like I want to maintain that defensive side of things and find a way to anchor that midfield with some stability while still taking full advantage of players that are able to run with pace on a quick break or have a route on the outside to get the ball forward.
Yeah, my hope is that with Dom in the lineup, now you have someone. I think, Tim brings up that Barco's fast, and he is. But to me, he's a little faster on the ball. He's not someone that's, like, making runs in behind a lot.
No, yeah.
And so it was almost like Bello and Lennon were tasked to do that. Your two fullbacks were the ones that were tasked to run in behind. So obviously they were getting caught forward all the time. So my hope is that, so you don't have to sacrifice that defensive part of your game, that now you have a player on the front three who can make runs in behind as opposed to the left and right back. At the same time, we don't know if he's going to be in the 11, so there's a lot of questions that need to be answered. But that's my hope, is that he'll bring, because that was just so obvious in Orlando. We just didn't have anyone that get in behind. And the two players that could were Brooks Lennon and George Bello, your left and right backs. And they were the ones who were always getting caught high and getting countered into that face.
Right. And again, it's kind of like Castro, I don't think, got a fair shake. He gets one showing. Granted, it was a poor showing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, same effect. You could say the same thing about and you could say the same thing about Mulroney, right? Like you can put that game on him, and ultimately you have a poor performance by two players that cost you 2 games in a 3-game tournament for what Atlanta had a chance to actually play in. So, I think all of these players need to get their fair shake at this point. So.
Yeah, I think so. This was kind of one thing I've been struggling with for a while, and Mike Gurman brings it up in the chat. If we go to a back four, who loses out at a right back is Escobar or Lennon. And I think in terms of seniority right now, Escobar has that position.
I think it's definitely Escobar. I mean, I think he's a very, very good right back.
But just think, like, when he's on his yellow card, which seems to happen a lot, Lennon's a excellent sub that you can bring in right away. Who's going to bring so much pace, especially if you bring him in the 70th minute. He's got so much energy. He can just burn up the right hand.
And again,
side.
Whenever you've got 5 substitutions in a game, there's no reason why that shouldn't be taking place.
And what it does tactically, and this is something Atlanta did last year, and for whatever reason they couldn't this year, but they could, he could come on and you can change the shape right there. Say if Jeff Lorenowitz is your holding mid, he could drop in and play with the 2 center backs, and then suddenly, Lennon comes for Escobar, and he and Bello become wing backs, and you change the shape. So it's a huge, I think, advantage for sure. But in terms of who loses out, it's got to be Lennon, right? I mean, Escobar has just been so good in that position.
Oh, he's a beast. He runs so slowly, but he just has so much speed, if that makes any sense.
That's like whenever they always do that, like fastest players in the Premier League list, and it's all center. It's like 10 center backs, because of how big they are and how much ground they cover. Like especially playoff Escobar.
Oh, playoff Escobar! Yeah. I can't wait. Can't wait to one day see him again.
Completely different beast. So we talked about this, I think, 2 weeks ago in terms of seeing youth, like maybe getting to see some of that development throughout the rest of the season. Like, are you guys, is Efren Morales going to factor in at all into the 20-man, 23-man rotation between Efren Morales and then we're not going to recall Andrew Carlton, I can't imagine, right? Even though he's balling pretty well for Indy right now.
I feel like it would be somebody. There would be somebody maybe close to the same age as him that's a little ahead in the pecking order. Like, I know that he's been out of the fold recently, but Jackson Conway or a player like that to get called. And I just feel like just being signed. I would love, again, play young guys, go into the second team, but maybe someone who's been there a little bit longer. And like I said, Jackson Conway is someone that comes to mind, especially because you need to score goals. And he's at least someone that can fill that role and see how he does.
Is Tyler Wolf of that same ilk? Like he's Wilf.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I look at some of the other ones. Like, I think, you're going really young, but Caleb Wiley's look pretty good. I mean, there are quite a few guys, I think, it's hard to say. It's not like I've watched them really closely, but there are guys similar to Morales in age and have come through the academy, but they've played professional soccer for a little bit longer, having just gotten more appearances with the USL team. And certainly now that Tony Annan coaching the twos, having, seeing a lot of these guys throughout their development as young players, I think would be very, very open to moving them to the first team whenever necessary.
I'm happy to give these guys opportunities in the right situation, but I'd be surprised if we saw Morales in the team. I thought it was more of, how at the end of the first season, 2017, we signed a Conquo. I think we signed Kunga and Bello. Yeah, but it was more of like keep away move. Like they were starting to attract interest, so we were like, okay, well, let's give them a pro contract so we can lock them in. But they never featured for the team until Bello. When did Bello feature? Was it 2018 or was it 19?
Yeah, he played the game against DC United where he scored the goal. So that was 2018, right?
Right. Yeah. So I'd be surprised if he starts a game this season.
Me too.
Well, right. I don't expect him to start a game or anything like that. I'm excited because you bring up Okonkwo and you bring up Lagos Kunga squad, and then Bello. I think the reason we've seen Bello in the lineup is because he fits a pretty common need.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
In world soccer, not even just MLS, but in with your as a left back. But we didn't have room for Okonkwo. The reason Lagos Kunga probably keeps going out on loan is because we have attacking options. Whereas Efraim Morales is a big a big defensive midfielder that could factor in maybe in the next year or two. I would think, right? I mean, he fits almost an immediate need for Lorenowitz once Lorenowitz retires. I feel like, and it's kind of exciting. I'm just getting excited about it because he seems like a big, imposing presence. He's 17 years old. He definitely seems like he's heading in the right direction to be in this team next year, maybe.
Mm-hmm. And that's, to go back to point, this is the season where you're going to see some to throw some curveballs and just throw a guy out there like that, and especially with 9 teams making the playoffs. Everyone's making the playoffs. So I don't know that it's going to be Morales, although you bring up an interesting point in terms of the role that he fills. But I would not surprise to see at least some guys make the 18 that are 16, 17, 18 years old, which would be super cool.
Yeah. I've had Longshore interviewed Tony Annan, and I think they were talking about Jackson Conway, but he was like Jackson Conway. They've been very sort of deliberate with his development, and because Annan was saying he's known him since he was for years, like almost 10 years. And they didn't want to push
so that's one.
Conway along. So I would be surprised if he ends up signing a pro contract with the senior team.
One that I'm really looking at is Will Riley, as far as, when we're talking about young players, and a goal scorer who is more, I think he has more experience. It's probably about the same as Jackson Conway, but that's another one I'm looking at that they've spoken of very highly of. And again, is pretty much a pure striker from what I've seen that could maybe step in and play. So there's a bunch of names. I know we're a little off topic here. I love what the twos are doing, just playing.
No such thing here.
Yeah, that's fair. Again, I come from Mouths of the South. Eric, he keeps us
just
regimented. He is the absolute worst. I don't know. I need to ask him if we can curse on the Zoom for Mouths of the South.
He said it was okay. He said it was.
He said it was okay.
He said it was totally
absolutely.
Fine.
He said more swearing the better.
I think his exact words were "fuck yeah."
Okay, well, I'm making up for lost time this week whenever we record, but. Yes, I just love that they're just throwing young players out there. And you're seeing some crazy stuff happen out there. You talked about like Morales, for instance, the other night scores that goal in his debut, and it's just such a cool moment, and then makes a just atrocious defensive error. About a minute later, and it's just you love that. Experiences like that are so important for young players, and there's a clear commitment, on the second team, whether these guys get called up or not, to get professional minutes for 16, 17-year-old kids. And this year you can really see the commitment to that. And that's huge. Even if these guys don't come to the first team, that's just good for development of American players and local players at that.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like that's exciting to see the USL team being treated more as a step up from the academy, or as part of the academy, as opposed to a standalone USL team. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
Like not seeing random 23, 24-year-old guys that are getting brought in for a single season to fill a starting role and then be gone the next year, when you could easily – we've seen guys wash out that we thought were going to be pretty great in this. Chris Goslin comes to mind. And
it felt like they were kind of caught in between both, right? They wanted to play young guys, but they were also had some older guys came in. And then also you had all the homegrown guys that were almost – some would argue stealing minutes at this point from those academy players. So I love that they're doing that, and you're seeing some crazy stuff happen because of it. Like these crazy games with these wild swings. But that's what happens when you play young players and throw them out there. And I'm glad that they've gone all in on that this season. And the interesting thing is they've actually played better, in my opinion, than the last 2 years.
Yeah, and that's good. That's the way it should be. At least that's how I feel it should be. This should be a graduation of the academy or young guys, as opposed to. This team was never put on, or they didn't get the franchise for it to be a USL winning team. You know what I mean? Like it's just like I would treat it like Real Madrid 2 and Barcelona B and that sort of thing, where it's really just an extension of the academy, and that's it.
It's not like you see those teams dominating all the time, even though they obviously have the money to do it if they want it.
Mm-hmm. I feel like it makes a lot more sense in MLS because of the salary cap. Like to bring those guys in to, the real value players are the guys that are not TAM players who have done exceedingly well for you. That, the Jeff Larinowitzes, those guys are, that's what you are striving for, to get those guys and to find them. And if you can bring them in on a homegrown contract, what is it, like 150,000 to the cap or something? That's gold. That is money. And those are the guys we want to be producing. And every now and then, hopefully you find an Alphonso Davies.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are the guys you can profit the most of in the future, and they're the ones who have the most control of in the short term in the salary cap. I know Julian Gressel didn't come to the academy, but they were talking about how they're actually doing him a favor, because the team could have just kind of said, fuck you, and forced him to stay.
Oh, absolutely.
He had no choice but to come back. If he was going to play in MLS, he had to come back to Atlanta. So it's I totally agree that if you develop 3 to 5 guys like that, not only does it help you financially, but it kind of gives you some wiggle room to go make some signings elsewhere, and opens up some money. So I'm really interested to see over the next couple of years, now that they're really committed to the cause, the twos, who we see break through, and if anyone breaks through, because in the end we won't really know if this project worked until we see these guys get a lot of professional minutes. But the only thing you can do is play them. And so I'm glad they're doing that. And like I said, it's actually been really fun to watch. It's been crazy because it's young players making crazy mistakes and also showing how talented they are. But it's been really fun to watch. So it's a good platform for guys to break through.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So one question I have. So Khan's doing well in Indy 11. Providing a whole bunch of assists to Tyler Pasher.
I love how we all know who Tyler Pasher is now.
I know.
I know. I do.
I Googled him just to make sure he had some affiliation to Atlanta United.
What a goal scorer, that Tyler Pasher, I tell you.
Ooh, that guy. So do we bring Colton back? Try him for another year? I don't know. I've had a lot of frustration with Andrew Colton.
So tough.
I feel like he went on loan probably a season or two too late. He should have gone a long time ago.
Yeah, that's true.
And I get irritated with him pretty easily. But do you think we give him another chance if he keeps up this form with USL?
Right now? Right?
No, just in general.
Season? Well, I'll just
yeah, but so USL is different to MLS. I mean, yeah, he hopefully.
No, I know it has very little. It has very little to do with Andrew Carleton, and it has more to do with us already debating how do we get the players that we have that clearly are talented into a lineup. Like, what's that going to get you whenever you've got everybody coming in healthy next year? Like,
my question is about Andrew Carleton. Do we bring him back?
No. Why? Why would you?
Well, he's loaned. He's on loan
for next season, or
yeah,
like.
Do we give him another season?
Yeah, you're not talking about recalling him early. You're talking
no,
after next year. Okay.
Right, okay, exactly. I see what you're saying.
In which case, yes.
Do we give him to? Do we sell him to Indy 11? Or
I mean, next year, let's just say feasibly, you're going to lose Kubo Torres, right? If all things are good, Kubo Torres is going to be gone because he's in as a stopgap for Joseph Martinez, probably auditioning for his next job.
But if all things are good, do we want to give Torres away?
Yeah, Castro's gone. Barco hopefully is sold, right? PD's hopefully sold for both the players and the club's sake, right? I mean, between profit and to get them to where they want to be. I mean, we're looking at a team that probably has room for Andrew Carleton next year, and if he continues in the form that he's in, I mean, you say he's gone on loan 2 years too late. He's only 20.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
he's still only 20 years old.
He wasn't doing but I feel like that's a year or two that he could have been developing further because he wasn't developing in Atlanta. He needed to get out of Atlanta. Like, it's finally he got out of Atlanta and look at what he's doing. I feel like last year at least there was nothing for him. He was right.
Well, it also comes into it also comes back to like, how does he fit into a lineup? Like, what good to do to have him if you don't have any way to use him? And we're talking about a team that, with a new manager, a healthy Joseph, and all of these other factors, like, I don't know how you use him. And if somebody's willing to offer you money for him at, some sort of a profit, I don't think that you can walk away from that. It doesn't make any sense to me why you would bring him back with the ability that Atlanta has been able to find players and reload and retool to where we have the same conversation, I feel like, year in and year out, with the exception of this year with who's going to score goals.
I think the sell-on value part of it is really big, right? Because obviously he's, 2-3 years ago was a huge name in terms of young players. And, it wasn't working out for him with the twos. For whatever reason, I mean, I tend to agree with Dan. I think just Atlanta, he needed a change of scenery. Atlanta wasn't working out, and but he is 20, so he'll be 21 next year. So whoever gets him is going to want him to pretty much go, I think, straight into their first team. So it could be just we're going to put him on loan, and whether it's a USL team or a lower MLS team comes and buys him, we're going to make some money for him. Like Dan mentioned before, he basically cost the team nothing. Being a homegrown player, so it would be a decent profit, even if the number isn't huge. At the same time, I feel
like he's more valuable because he's getting play time and is being successful somewhere else. I don't know that he's necessarily going to have that same success in this lineup, is what I'm saying. Like, he didn't have a place before. I don't know what his place is now, particularly with his competition, Joseph Martinez, returning next year.
And I feel it sucks to keep bringing this up, but him in the city of Atlanta. He had multiple managers talk about his professionalism, I mean, that's all documented stuff. So, I mean, to me, what we're seeing pretty clearly is for him to be the best professional he can be, no matter what level it's at, it's not here, because it's not like he wasn't playing USL every match last year, but he looks a totally different player.
Well, I guess a better question might be, what's your goal with Carleton, one way or the other, right? Like, do you see Carleton as a potential future first team Atlanta United DP, like, striker player?
No,
or is he a player that you're just hoping to make money on, right?
Yeah.
And he's clearly found a successful role somewhere on loan and not on Atlanta United's roster. That seems to serve the purpose of what we're ultimately trying to get out of him, which is improving his stock in some way to where you can potentially sell him somebody.
This is kind of the last year he fits into that young player label. So it almost is like, unless he was to come back for Atlanta next year and play well, that his stock might never be higher than this.
Right.
I don't know.
Right.
I mean, I'm sure they've thought both ways through, but it was good to put him out on loan regardless of what happens. That's interesting though, Dan, about saying it was 2 years too late. I can totally see what you're saying.
Yeah, because if he was performing like this 2 years ago somewhere else, I mean, think where he could be right now.
And the club will say, look, he was playing USL minutes with the twos, but clearly Atlanta, I mean, they knew that Atlanta was it wasn't working for him, and so Indianapolis, there's nothing to do there, and it's a little better. So
that's fair. Yeah, it's true.
It is. I mean, I hate talking about that. I really hate talking about that stuff, but it's not like it's not well documented, and that both managers haven't called him out for lack of professionalism. So that's a stain on his career, and we're not being TMZ level stuff here. That's a legitimate part of his career that teams are going to look at, and maybe cost him a couple of years of development. I don't know, but certainly he's going on loan, and everything looks different.
Yeah, I think we either loan him again or we just cut him, or sell him if we can.
Yeah, I mean, you might be able to get something for him. I mean, even
get something that's better than nothing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I honestly don't know how much time he has left on his contract either.
I know. I don't know. I kind of feel like an empty roster slot is kind of something for him.
Yeah.
That's really
Jonathan
bitchy.
Gonzalez. Bring in Jonathan Gonzalez.
John Gone.
Dude, if we can get him. That's interesting because our DP strategy is always he would come in on a loan first, that's as reported. But if we buy him, he becomes a DP.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
And so that would be the first time we would have a more defensive player as a DP on the squad. Maybe that's the time the fourth DP comes in.
But he's one. That's the rumor I was most excited about of all the guys that we've been linked with. I mean, I think all the stuff we're talking about in center midfield, he brings so much of that together because he does so much of that well. He's a good defender, but he can also cover ground. He can pass and play make. He does so many of those things just as one player that we're asking all two or three midfielders to do cohesively on the field. I think he's one that could really bring things together in terms of being able to control the tempo of games in the middle of the field. But I don't know. Who knows what's going to happen? But that's the name I was most excited about. That's been mentioned.
So I like. Go ahead, Kevin.
No, you go ahead, Tim.
No, I was just going to say I like the prospect of what he brings in terms of unlocking the rest of the team and being able to free the people in front of him to do the things that they need to do. That to me, I think is super exciting, but also exciting because he's arguably one of the top prospects in North America and one of the best young players in North America. And to have him on our team, I think is a huge asset.
Absolutely. And you know what? It's also a bit of a relief because the last little bit, the entire off season was like, do they realize that we don't really have a good defensive midfielder? It was weird. This was not acknowledged. So at least this is a bit of a relief. The club realizes this is an issue and maybe was going to fix it earlier if not for, pandemic. So that made me relieved that they at least, because I was really worried, looking at the personnel holes in the middle and being like, did we not recognize that this is a problem? So that's a relief to me because I think the front office has a lot of trust to earn back with the fans because which really, what is that? It means something, but for all the great stuff they did the first 2 years, it's been fuck up after fuck up the last 2 seasons. There are tons of holes. We're sitting here talking about a team that, obviously Joseph being gone is an issue, right? But we shouldn't be talking about there's no one that can run in behind the defense until you stand down. There's nobody that can control the midfield when you're trying to play a possession-based system. So finally now you're linked with John Gone. But in the off season and in the beginning of the season, it was like, why are you not recognizing this? So it's a relief to me that the front office hopefully does indeed know what they're doing and is correcting some of the wrongs the last couple of years.
So no, damn it, it's my turn.
It's hard on Zoom.
All things that you have right now as a constant, and you can't rely on anything being guaranteed. You can't. It's just a little game. I want to frame it this way. You can't depend on a fourth DP slot. You have the 3 players as DPs currently. You can't, depend on one of them necessarily being sold for profit, and you have to make cuts and changes to get Gonzalez into this lineup. Who stays, who goes, who tells your story.
In order to get Gonzalez in the lineup?
Yeah. How do you work it out with the 3 DPs that you have right now?
Well, I mean,
are you totally sure he's a DP and not a high-level TAM?
Let's say he is a DP for the sake of argument.
It's tough. I mean, it's PT, right? I mean, if you can't sell Barco, it's PT on some sort of loan or something like that, probably. Unless someone would buy him, and he would have to go back to Argentina, I would guess. And I would see more likely probably a loan deal. But that, I mean, you can run into an issue there if he's a DP level player. My hope initially was that he was going to be a TAM guy, like a high level TAM guy.
Well, yeah, you wonder like how with the new CBA and the allocation of TAM, the new allocation of TAM that we get every season, maybe because nobody really knows how much TAM we have. Maybe they're projecting out into the future to see, well, we will have enough TAM to pay this guy down. And he's only
estimates. Are there estimates about how much we have?
That's the first thing you've said in like 5 minutes is that.
I'll go back on mute.
Yeah, I mean, I would love him to be a TAM player. I don't know how we do that right now, but yeah, I would.
But it's got to be PT, right? I mean, if Kevin's, if you have to, it has to. I mean, I think if that's assuming you can't sell Barco, why would you ever, get rid of him? It has to be PT. It has to be PT.
Unless Barco or Joseph gets sold, it has to be PT because he makes the least of the 3 DPs. But maybe they were saying 2020, well, the off season of 2020 or somewhere in 2021, that's when Barco would be sold, and they're just projecting out. Then they could bring him in, but maybe there is some other way that they can figure it out to get. What do you think, Tim?
No, I mean, I agree. It's got to be PD. But I think the more logical thing is probably going to be Barco. I think Barco's a more intriguing transfer for another team to bring in. I think that PD, at this point is 26, 27 years old. I think he's more of a wild card. You don't know, going from what you saw in Argentina and then seeing what inconsistency there's been in his play in Atlanta and MLS. It's kind of a more of a gamble than, I mean, Barco to an extent has had the same level of inconsistency, or at least to some extent, but he's also a lot younger than PD.
Barco, you're going to take a lot less of a loss on than
Very true.
selling Pity, and you still free up the same space with the assumption that Barco wouldn't be far behind for a sale regardless. So you maybe lose a couple million on a future deal with Barco, but it's not like he's going to be here for another 5 years one way or the other. So you lose a couple million on a potential future deal, maybe not. You never know how he plays. Pity, you're most likely going to be taking a loss no matter what if you sell him sooner rather than later. So
I feel like pre-pandemic it was almost a given that Barco was going to go even in the summer, if not, after the season. Now it's because of so many, factors. I think it's a little less certain. How
much did we bring Barco in for? Was it 8?
Pity was 16, right?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure Barco was 15.
He was, $15 million. Yeah. So,
and then Pity was 16.5 or something like that.
17.
Yeah. If we sell Barco, I really don't see us. I don't know. I see a break even, if that.
Pre-pandemic, I would say you're gonna make I mean, the numbers were.
It's not a loss though. That's the point that I'm trying to make, and why I maybe align with Tim's argument more so than getting rid of Pity is because no matter what you do with Pity, unless you loan him, you're going to be taking a loss. I don't even think you can break even with him right now with his performance and his tenure with Atlanta United versus Barco, who's not only had his play with Atlanta United but down in Argentina last summer as well. I think you've got a lot more going for him, not to mention his age, that you can at least sell him and break even and free up a slot for a player that maybe Pity has a run that you can get some sort of break even or profit on versus just taking a loss out the gate, because Barco isn't going to make that much more profit whenever you sell him in the future to offset as big a loss as you're going to have Pity, which you signed for more than what Barco's contract was.
So I'd come at it a different way. I'd say Pity just plays out his contract, but the amount of profit you can make on Barco is going to be such a massive higher ceiling than what we would get on Pity. So I would be hesitant. I'm not going to sell Barco for a break even because I know his potential is so much higher. I think you keep them around. I don't think either of them get sold. I think they play the 2021 season. And then I don't think you can sell Pity at a profit. I agree with you.
So here's the issue is how much of a loss are you willing to take on Pity, and why you go the Barco route for breaking even is because you're having to bank on Barco's sale potentially. Like if you're looking at it to try to stay in the black, you want Barco's sale to somehow offset. And I know this team and the manager and ownership doesn't necessarily have to do that, but just trying to think logistically, you would hope that Barco's sale would account for more than what a Pity loss would be, just dollars and cents.
I don't think it matters. I think a Barco break even hurts our concept of our club, our brand, more than trying to break even, like trying to stay in the black. I say you just take a loss.
But you think Pity's loss somehow is okay for Atlanta's brand? Like that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, because you're showing you can make 10 times the amount of profit on Barco, that you're showing consistently that you can make 10 times the amount on players. You're going to make a miss. You're going to have a miss.
But you really think that Barco's profit's going to be that high, Dan?
I think it could be in the 20-25 million if he has a really good season. I just think you hold.
Miggy went for 22. Is that right?
Yeah.
And you're seeing maybe a little bit of course correction with the transfer market right now in Europe too. Right. I mean, I've seen so many reports of teams that are like, we can't really buy unless we sell this year.
Right.
And
And I don't think the past 2 years have been kind to Barco and Pity to pump up their value. Even like pre-pandemic, I think Barco was going to go, but I still don't think we'd have got what he could really be.
I think if you look at the clubs that he was linked with, being linked with as big a club as Inter Milan, I think that shows that's his kind of ceiling, his value. If he plays the rest of the year very well, and again, the pandemic is such a wild card, right? I mean, because we just don't know what teams are going to spend. But I don't see, taking that part out of it, I don't see any reason to believe that if he plays the rest of the season out well, that he wouldn't be sold for a profit.
So let me go a different route then with Barco, because I think this is an interesting conversation as well. It's like, how much of a loss are you willing to take on Pity, but also how much profit are you expecting on Barco? And Dan, you mentioned 23. If you're Darren Eales and you're in the negotiation table, what offer do you want to entertain for Barco?
I'd say
you're willing to consider.
I'm not getting out of bed for 30 million. I feel like the profit on Barco is more important than the loss on Pity.
What about you, Tim? What do you think for profit on Barco?
So what's interesting is how old
I
is
just
Miguel
don't see
Almiron?
30 million. I do not
right now. That's why you hold.
So let me
I don't. I mean, even just best case scenario, like that's just so crazy to me. Go ahead, Tim. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, let me make the case for 30 million. I think that if you look at Miguel Almiron, he was sold for what, 23, 24? No, is it 22? Is what you said, Dan?
22.
Yeah, 22. He was also 3 years older than Barco is at this point. So I think if you get Barco, like you're saying, maybe another half, even at this half a season, if he really shows out and he brings back to form the U20 World Cup form, or U21 World Cup, whatever it was that he was in before he got injured, and then rolling into the pandemic and all that good stuff, and playing under Frank de Boer, whatever you want to talk about there. I think there's a case to be made that it's going to be a profitable return on him. But again, to Josh's point, pandemic, it's such a wild card in the way that teams are spending right now. I just don't know what to expect.
I mean, like if he's been linked with Inter, and he plays the rest of the season out well, and that level of club comes in to buy him, I don't see any reason to believe it wouldn't be like a 30 million number. Obviously that is best case scenario. But with his age and the fact that he's, played well at the international level for the youth teams, in the under 20 World Cup and whatnot. But I think when you look at his age and the fact that he's been a pretty big prospect, for several years now, and it's not like he's played pretty well in Atlanta, all things considered. If he plays the rest of this season out well and Inter comes in for him, why would he not be worth 30 million or more?
I think it comes back to all the same stuff. Is like he's played pretty well, all things considered. Like he's done these things that are not at the I don't see what Barco's contribution to this team in his run of play has been that's been as integral or as big of a resume builder, even at his best, as what Miguel Almiron's was for Atlanta United, where he was in the spotlight with Joseph Martinez for his entire tenure with this team. And Barco's been here 3 years now, right? And you take the pandemic out altogether. I'm not saying he's playing bad by any means, and I think that you will get some sort of a profit, but I don't see his star shining as bright with Atlanta United as Miguel Almiron's did during his run. He doesn't seem to be that. That's what I'm saying is that is a marquee signing, and you would expect a marquee player that I have not seen a showing with Barco under any system or management with this team and this lineup that has a club going, that's our fucking guy.
I guess my thing with that is I don't know if that's necessarily just what determines value, is how much you dominate a game as the guy. I think that Barco's game translates a little bit better where Barco can dominate a game or the way he dominates it now. If you look at Miguel Almiron for Newcastle, he's a totally different player. He's a work rate role player type. I think Barco, between his age and I think his game fits in a little bit better. Miguel Almiron is running by people, like in MLS. It was unfair. And so that made him stand out a little bit more, whereas Barco is a guy that's more intricate passing, wants to combine with teammates. I think that game translates a little bit better to an Inter than, say, Miguel Almiron's game would to an Inter, because he's better off at a club like Newcastle, where you want his work rate, and his ability to run by guys and break out in the counter. But I don't know that he's necessarily a guy that can dominate a game in Europe the way he did in MLS. I think Barco in some ways is, although we don't know it yet. It's based on potential. He's still based on his youth, but that's why I think his value is maybe even a little higher.
So to that point, what would you, and this is just my ignorance, what would be an average salary for Inter right now? What would you say?
They're probably paying $3 million. I mean, Barco would be going in actually,
or an average, available. Yeah. Can we pull up an average signing? That's what I think we need to get at here.
Transfer fees, or are you talking about contracts?
You mean the
transfer fees?
Yeah. Well, no, contracts.
The contract,
because that's what we would be getting, right? Or no, I guess we'd be getting the transfer fee.
Transfer fee, yeah.
Yeah. What's the average transfer fee? Sorry.
The transfer fee. I mean, they've spent quite a bit of money on transfers. So
yeah, especially of late, as they're back on the incline, right? I mean,
yeah. So I'll pull it up.
Between Lukaku, I mean, they're going to be probably sitting on a decent amount of money. I'd imagine they're going to sell Lautaro Martinez for a hefty profit, and then they're probably going to have a lot of money to spend.
And I'm not saying any of this to be contrarian. I'm just trying to set realistic expectations.
Sure.
I just want to make sure that's.
So they've spent $44 million already on Achraf Hakimi from Real Madrid. 27. This is already 27 and a half for Barella from Cagliari. 50. They've spent a lot of money. I mean, they've spent quite a I don't see a club of that level. And again, pandemic, and Tim mentioned Lukaku, which, that's what, 80 plus million. So they've spent quite a bit of money over the last year or so. And again, we're focusing on one club, but if it's that level of club, I think
that's what I'm talking about, right? It's
possible.
Exactly, and that's the thing. Is like, regardless if it's Inter or anybody else, and over on that side is like, what level? Like, who are we comparing? Like, who do we need to compare Barco to for that level of signing, regardless of what club it goes to, and like what does a $30 million price tag for Inter or somebody else really equate to a player signing? Because that's what we're looking at here. Does Barco somehow fit the bill? Because right now, all Atlanta really has to go off of is the Miggy sale. And I don't know that maybe most of Atlanta's fan base, but myself not being as well versed in that, I just don't know what to expect. And I don't personally see that value based off of the track record that Atlanta's had in those sales and what that dollar amount really equated to for a player contribution for Atlanta United.
Well, I think it's important to clarify this. If you're looking at Barco right now, if we sold him right now, there's no way we get 30 million. But if we hold on Barco and he has a great season with the potential that we've been sold on, in a year, potentially he does have that sort of value, because then he's only going to be 20.
But again, like, how good of a season does he have to have? That's what I'm trying to get to. Is like, I know that it's the pandemic and all that, but like, Barco's been here 2 years. He's had as we've all said, he's had a great showing, all things considered. Is that good enough for 30 million? Like what we've seen out of him so far? Does he have to be substantially better? Like, how much better does he have to be, and can he get there?
Well, I think you've already seen it. I think the first, 2-3 matches before the break, you saw there's some brilliant performances from him.
Absolutely.
So I think, we haven't seen, between injuries and youth and whatnot, we haven't seen it consistently enough, but we have seen it. And certainly this would be the time it would make sense for it to kind of come out. Would be the end of this season, now that he's, a seasoned professional, that we see that side of Barco and have his value skyrocket.
And what does that take from a team standpoint? Do you have to build the team around that to get that kind of a showing? Like, that's the other side of that, right?
Well, do you have to build the team? I think it's almost, he just can. That's the thing, is I don't think the team has to be built around him for his value to be 30 million. I think he's more of a guy that fits into a role and plays it very, very well. But you're right. I think at the same, you would almost say if there was a guy that's going to take a game by the scruff of the neck, just based on their highlights, it would be P.T. Martinez, right? Or Joseph Martinez. Barco is more of a guy that completes pass. He does a lot of different things.
Oh, absolutely.
So I don't think he has to dominate matches the way Miguel Almiron is to be seen as a very valuable piece. I think it is more likely he slides into the same role that he would play for Atlanta and play it well for an Inter, whereas Miguel Almiron goes from dominating games to, a great role player in Europe. I just think Barco's game he plays now translates more to Europe than Almiron's game in MLS.
Okay.
But I see, and again, this is one of the things I'm fascinated to watch, and the pandemic throws a curveball into it.
Absolutely.
What is Barco going to be worth? Because we don't know. Like you said, Kev, there's no precedent for this from Atlanta United. We can kind of look at Almiron, but again, he's a little older. His role's a little different.
Looking at a precedent from MLS, like, that's the other side of this.
Yeah,
it's
good point.
You're looking at a fucking marquee signing with Miggy, and you've got to have another $8 million lumped on top of that for a player that hasn't had nearly that kind of performance. So it's like, that's where I'm getting to here with all this. It's
and
like,
that's what the European club will say.
Yeah, exactly. Like, how much better does he have to be? Because the league as a whole has not produced that level of talent. And sure, he looks great and he looks serviceable, but against what level of competition in what's deemed or perceived as a lower level league? Like, what's a realistic expectation? personally, I think 30 may be a little unfounded just based on all of these compounding factors. It's not just Barco's performance. It's the league's performance and the league's sales and transfer fees. And yes, that is the trajectory that we want to see MLS heading in. And you hope that Atlanta United is setting that trend in a positive way. But 2 years removed from a Miggy signing with a pandemic thrown into the mix, I'm not buying it right now. That's just me personally. And
it's totally fair point.
It's not to say it's not possible, but what needs to happen for that to be possible? I just don't see the pathway there besides a big club with a deep purse that has signed other players for that price tag.
So I see 2018, 19 appearances, 4 goals, 2 assists. 2019, 14 appearances, 4 goals, 3 assists. Those are not great numbers.
Well, if you consider him to be a goal-scoring player, I mean, if you look at his chances created and his dribbles and his fouls won, I just don't think he's that type of player. And it's not terrible. 4-3 and 14 is not terrible. For,
I refuse to believe that we have seen a consistently good Barco.
That's unquestionable.
Don't think we've seen that. So you
agreed.
Right, but this is what I'm talking about. You're talking about selling him now. I'm talking about the potential that he'd have when he doesn't have a Miguel Almiron in front of him, when he doesn't have a Frank de Boer telling them just figure it out by yourself, and has some structure behind him where he can. And like you said last time, Kev, if he can bring that leadership in and be a leader in the team, that elevates him, way up.
Absolutely. But we're talking about potential here, but based on what? Right. Like, again, it's like, we don't know. Like, we can't tell what the future is going to bring. It's just a huge risk. And yes, you have a potential huge reward at the end of it, but it's like, based on other comparable sightings that you would hope that you're bringing in this level of money, you're going to have this back and forth. And how realistic is it to have another $8 million on top of a marquee transfer that just happened 2 years ago, and yes, his potential for performance is a lot higher, but will that garner that extra $8 million from a club that hasn't been paying that to previous league signees? You know what I mean? Like, it's all of those different factors that it's like, he better be really fucking good, and you're expecting a hell of a lot. And I'm not saying that he's not capable of doing that, but there's a lot of other question marks around this team that's going to have a new manager that he's going to have to fall in line with and figure out a new system and figure out all these parts and pieces. And all the while, this age for this player that's really young now keeps fucking ticking and keeps racking up. And before you know it, he's not 20 years old anymore. He's more like 25, and he's back at that Miggy age that we're all talking about that he's so well ahead of right now because of just the way it's all sort of set in motion.
Well, I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? I mean, that's the risk, that's right. If you can foresee that, you should play the stock market. I mean,
but again, it goes back to like, do you build a team around him to make sure that risk at least has a shot? Or are you going to hope that a subpar performance, even at best, so even at best with the role he's been playing, your stats were what, 4 goals and 8 assists? What was it? 4 goals and 10 assists? I forget what.
It was 3.
4 and 3.
Okay, so 4 and 3. So let's say you triple it. You're looking at 12 goals and 9 assists. Is that a $30 million player? I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know.
At his age, it is.
Yeah, for sure. But to play devil's advocate.
But do you see that happening next year? I don't know.
I mean, if you look at Dan's stat, if he plays 30 games, then he's giving you 10. Then he's going to give you like 10 and 6. I mean, he's been injured. He's been, he was absolutely. At the U20 World Cup. Mm-hmm. So I mean, he there's some contextual stuff that has, and it's you're right. I mean, he's never been consistently great, but he's been great a good amount. And there's a lot of contextual stuff that's prevented him from being consistent, from injuries to the U20 World Cup to pandemic. So to his first season, where I think he was very young, and obviously, as we know, and had to play behind Miguel Almiron. And so, I mean, I think it's not like he's been playing whole seasons. There's been a lot of context where he's missed time. That's I think hurt his ability to be consistent. But to me, I've seen enough of him, and there's enough there's some very good statistical data on him aside from the kind of average, if we want to call it that, goals and assist numbers. So, I think the foundation is there. And if he can play 3 or 4 really good, how many games are we left in the fucking season? I don't know. But, whatever. if he can finish out the season the way that he played those opening matches before we shut down, I think his value when you put everything together that I've just mentioned, and he finally has a consistent stretch, I think there's a team out there that might be willing to spend that sort of money on him, and I certainly think Atlanta United will be asking for that type of transfer fee. That 30-ish number that you mentioned.
That's why I don't think we will be selling him. Like, I feel like if we have a normal season next season, he needs that extra season to get more profit.
But to Kevin's point, then if he doesn't have a good season and then he's 21, and there's a big difference between, it seems weird, but there's a big difference between 2021 in terms of buying and potential.
Mm-hmm.
Then you might take a huge loss, where, so it's an this is what the club is, they have to succeed at these types of transactions to, as you were saying earlier, Dan, to cement their brand of developing young players and sending them on.
That's the whole game though, isn't it? You have to take those risks.
Absolutely. Yeah. So we're going to see. PT was a risk. Barco was a risk. And we'll see what happens.
Tim, devil's advocate. I know you got it.
I was just going to say, if I'm one of those European squads and I want Barco, one of the first things I would say is, well, Alphonso Davies was $13.5 million US. Tyler Adams was $2 million US. And those are 2 absolute stud players, 2 of the better young players in Bundesliga right now. You're looking at Alphonso Davies, who just skyrocketed his stock. Potentially right now, you're looking at him as a top 5 left back in the world, right? All things considered.
Although it's not like this was expected. Lately. But yeah.
No, absolutely. But you look at him, you looked at everybody that watched MLS knew the potential that Alphonso Davies had, right? Like, he was an insane prospect at 18 or 17 years old, I think, whenever he secured the transfer over to Bayern Munich. And to still think that still only garnered a $13.5 million US transfer fee. Granted, Miguel Almiron, we did end up getting, we did some pretty smooth business to get $22 million out of that transfer. But and maybe you look at the Tyler Adams thing, and maybe that's an insider trading type thing, right? Where
that's awful.
I would look more at the Davies one, I think. But it's at the same time, Tim, it's not like, Bayern, I was not expecting him to go to a Bayern level club. I think that was almost shrewd business from them, as opposed to him being in some ways, I think Barco's name is bigger than Davies' was before he transferred with bigger clubs. Certainly that's not the case anymore, and I could see the argument either way. But it's not like personally, I was surprised that he went to a club level of Bayern Munich, and I think they realized the potential, and then they could kind of get him on the cheap for their standards at least. So
yeah, but they did the same thing with Chris Richards too, right? A relative unknown center back, U.S. center back that's going to be playing. He's been playing for them recently, right?
He got on at the end of Bundesliga. He played some minutes.
Yeah. So maybe that speaks more to what Rummenigge is doing over there than it does to what MLS really is valued at around the world.
It's interesting. You're just starting to see these transfers coming out of the league, and it's almost like we might look back on the Alphonso Davies transfer, and Vancouver will be like, what were we doing? Maybe we could have gotten more. But we're just starting to see these players, these good young players move on. And the way they perform, certainly Alphonso Davies helps Barco's value in an indirect way.
Sure,
you can point to him as a young player going from MLS and saying, look, our quality of play is good enough. What they can.
And I think Miggy's is too. I think it's all about precedence and trajectory and trends. But again, it's like, how big are those steps on that trend and on that upward trajectory? Is it a $1 or $2 million jump, or is it a $10 to $12 million jump in between those transfers and those signings? And so that's where I think there's going to just be a lot of this insider trading, to Tim's point, that's going to have to take place to try to get that, regardless of what performance takes place on the field.
Yeah, I think what Barco can take advantage of is because he has a bigger platform. He had a bigger platform than Alphonso Davies and Tyler Adams, just because he's on the Argentinian team. And quite frankly, because he's Argentinian, like if Alphonso Davies,
that's a great point.
If Alphonso Davies was Brazilian, he would be like 45 million.
That's a really great point.
And it's ridiculous. And I think, and what I love about Christian Pulisic is he was at Dortmund and he made that transition from Dortmund to, was it 64?
Yeah.
If Pulisic was showing the same level and he went for an MLS team to Chelsea, it would be probably 20.
That's a great point.
Million.
Or to your point, if Pulisic was Brazilian, right?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. 100 million.
Yeah. But again,
Atlanta's kind of paying the cost of business right now with Pity to that same point, right? It's like you pay him all this money to see a subpar performance just based on the region.
Yeah. But I mean, silly season is in effect. A guy that I've never heard of, Alphonso Davies' teammate from Canada, Jonathan David, just got sold to Lille for 30 million euro. So he went from playing in the Belgian league for Ghent, I think.
He's a forward, yeah.
Yeah. He's 20 years old, so it's not like he's an 18-year-old super prospect, right? He's a 20-year-old. He produced a lot at Ghent, I guess. And but I mean, I don't know. I never know what to think of the transfer market. It's so weird.
And Belgium's an established league. Belgium's an established league where players have come out and performed. So, you can just say, yeah, he's performing. He's a highly thought of 20-year-old player. You're going to pay $30 million. You can't really do that yet in MLS.
Yeah.
Right. And you hope that we continue to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brendan Aronson. We'll see what happens with Brendan Aronson and the like in MLS.
Paxton Pomacall. Yeah, a lot of guys. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we got to wrap up here. We've already gone way over. Rightfully so, though. It's been great discussion. 6 games left. Next game this Saturday against Nashville, right? 6 games left. I know we talked last week about what our predictions were for the remainder of the season. We've only gotten 6 games slated of whatever that remaining amount is, but we know we at least have 6 games. What do you expect to see out of Atlanta? How many points do you see them taking home out of those 6 games?
I'll say 10. So 10, yeah. I'll say 3 wins and a draw.
I like that.
Yeah, I mean it's nice to be playing these 3 teams. I mean, I know Orlando played well at MLS's back, but they're still Orlando, and then Nashville haven't looked good, and then Inter Miami have problems similar to Atlanta United coming off the back of the tournament. So there's a potential there if the team is out there and enjoying themselves that they could catch lightning in a bottle and really catch form. But I kind of fall in between. I think it's going to be a successful stretch. But yeah, I like 10 points, 3 wins and a draw.
Okay.
No losses to Orlando.
No.
I'm going to be a little bit more optimistic and say 12 to 15.
You gotta
12 to 15. You're taking a point range. I didn't know I could do that.
You got to validate Barco's sale now. So you can't come off of what you were predicting last week for the points on the remainder of the season after talking up Barco so much. You got to start seeing results to get that transfer fee.
That's right. I got to get goals, man. Yeah. I got to get goals.
What do you think, Tim?
The optimist in me wonders if we drop more than 4 points. And I think those 4 would beat Orlando. I don't know. I look at Nashville. Nashville is like, it's the island of misfit toys. Like if you look at their lineup, it's kind of crazy. Like it's a bunch of guys that had good runs at different MLS teams. And if I'm looking at the lineup right from last night, which I didn't watch the game, Walker Zimmerman was playing left back. Like that's just that seems odd to me. But I think we take 6 points from Nashville. I think we take 6 points from Miami. Orlando's the question mark to me. I think we've never
13.
lost. What's that?
I say 13. Yeah, I think we lose to Orlando this year.
I think so too.
1-1 for Atlanta.
I'm going with 13. Yeah. I think we take a point in Atlanta, and then we lose down in Orlando. But I think we take the same. I think we have a good schedule. I think for where we're at.
Especially and that's what Atlanta needs right now is something to ease us back into regular play.
I mean, Miami are in crisis too. You know, I mean, so that's nice.
Yeah. All right, that's not bad. So, what do you think? Everybody thinking a win this weekend?
Hey, we're playing Nashville, right? I think it will. I think Nashville will probably hold us close. But I am expecting us to win based on the 2 weeks that Glass has had with the team.
Based on nothing. But I agree.
But I mean,
based on nothing, I think.
But the good thing is, I don't think Nashville really has anything. They have no idea what to prepare for. So
I think that's the way all of these teams are going to be right now with Atlanta.
Yeah. So I feel like that goes into our favor. And have they played 3 games in a row against FC Dallas? And FC Dallas have not put together a good string of performances either. So I don't know. We'll see. We'll see. There's still a whole season that Nashville need to play. You can only predict against what we've seen, and it's been a largely pretty defensive team.
Yeah. What do you think, Tim? Win this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. And then just to point out, Mike German, I think, is saying not true in terms of, I think my comment about Walker Zimmerman, I think the app I'm using has the lineup all screwed up, which is, anyway, I guess he was playing center back, which makes a lot more sense. But I think we end up winning that game.
Score prediction?
I'd say like a 2-1.
What about you, Josh?
I'll say 1-0 Atlanta.
I like it. Who's going to get
it? I like our defense. I mean, I think that's the one part that you can look at. You mentioned this earlier, Kevin. You know, obviously we're going to jump all over all the holes, but I think it's a decent group of center backs. You know, I mean, I think the defense is pretty good. I don't see any reason that you can't lock down Nashville. You just got to find a way to score goals.
Who's going to get the 1?
I have no fucking idea.
Exactly, right?
Miles Robinson.
Yeah, some set piece. Yeah, I like it. Yeah, I don't. I'm gonna say. How about let's say Jurgen Damm.
Okay.
Yeah. Does Kubo Suarez get the start on Saturday? For you guys, do you think?
He has to, surely.
Unless you false 9 again, right? I mean, surely.
I don't think so. Not this soon.
Just
I think he plays.
Just because Kevin says no, I'm going to say yes.
Of course you will. And I think we get a transfer fee of $11 billion for him at the end of the season.
It's going to drive his value up.
Yeah.
Pretty sure he's only on a 6-month contract.
6 months, $6 million, worth it. I say a win as well, 1-0, and I think our boy George Bello does not hit the crossbar this outing and actually slots it home.
I hope he does.
He's like our most dangerous attacking player in Orlando.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. That's what I'm saying. He's the one that would put a shot on frame. Yeah. I'm taking it.
Him and Castro, that first game, take away Castro's blunders. He had a lot of good chances.
Well, I mean, plenty of chances, just nothing on frame.
Well, no, there's something to be said about positioning, right? It's just he wasn't on target that night.
Pity put a free kick on frame, so
yeah.
When?
Yeah.
I think it was against Cincinnati. It went straight in the keeper.
I remember, yeah. It was a good
strike. It was on frame.
What is this? Ron Pena is wanting to join the stream. Wanting to, a new fighter has entered. A new challenger has entered.
Oh man! All right, thank you guys so much, Josh. You guys still doing Mouths of the South weekly? Or are you guys doing bi-weekly now? How are you guys running?
Yeah, we're doing it weekly. We'll record on Wednesday this week, and we'll just go hard on the match and preview it, and Yeah, I mean, it's no one knows what to expect. I mean, it's to be honest, it's kind of fun. You know,
absolutely.
Yeah, we're gonna see what happens.
It's like the rest of the world right now, right?
Yeah, it's great fun.
Just sit back and watch it burn. We'll see what happens. So where can the people find you at?
You can find me on Twitter at JoshB914.
And Mouse of the South is...
Oh, yeah, sorry. At MOTS Podcast. You can find us on Twitter, yes. Probably should have plugged the podcast, not me.
Nah, that's fine. Eric
Sorry,
got
I've never heard
of
of
it last week. We got enough of Eric last week.
Oh, I'm sure. 1 week is enough.
All right, Dan, what about you?
You can find me at DMJMS. I'm not really doing anything.
What about you, Tim?
First, we only had one score prediction in the trap. It was Elliott Beaven, 3-0 Atlanta.
All right, I'll take it.
Yeah, I'll take that too. I have very
3 own goals.
Yeah, 3. Who scores?
Walker Zimmerman.
I think Walker Zimmerman, Anibaba gets
definitely
one.
Anibaba.
And then Daniel Levitz with the third to kind of seal the game.
No, John Lovitz scores the third.
Yeah.
He comes in
and how? You can find me at Tim Herb. I'm on Instagram. That's it.
Find me as well at The Architect. That's at @the_ARC. Number 1 TECT. Collectively at Home Before Dark. That's before spelled B and the number 4. Be sure to leave us a rating or review on iTunes to hear it read aloud on the show. Been a few weeks since we've had that. And by a few weeks, I mean a few months. So be sure to do that. At the very least, tell a friend. We'll see you next week. As always, be home before dark.
Snip, snip, snip those guitar strings.
Oh, I thought you were talking about
vasectomies.
Yeah, I thought this was a vasectomy talk.
God knows Dan.
It's
something on my mind.
Coming from